I do agree with you in the fact that your stories are pretty much always under control and everything. And I think you show this to the whole world of readers, and not only with your All-Star Superman, which is, in my opinion, the the ultimate take on the character. I had the chance to talk with most writers, Italian, but mostly American writers, and for all of them, Superman seems like the point where you have to get to have your being recognized as a comic book superhero writer. I mean, he is the first character, and at the end, the ultimate character. With All-Star Superman, you did this again. I found it similar to Batman on the take. I mean, you get to take all these elements in the character's history, and it seems I had this epiphany, and it seems like you are a Michelin star chef. You take ingredients that are everyone can use, but your mix is something completely different, which is not in contrast with the tradition of the character. Actually, it's perfectly in character in that retrospect, but your character is something more. Your story is something more. It has some flavor that your stories only have.
Well, it may be partly, for me, as you say, I have to look at it all as it's a big object. Something like Superman's been around for a long time. There's a lot of angles to Superman, and to me, the only way to understand the character is to try and understand all of those angles and somehow reflect them. But at the same time, that a story also has to have a mythological underpinning. So with All-Star Superman, it's kind of the 12 labors of Hercules are in there somewhere. He does 12 great super feats. But there's other stories, the story of the mythological sun god who goes down into darkness and then rises up again. And you see that in All-Star Superman. Issue 6, he goes down into the Bizarro world and he has to go through this ordeal and then rise up again. And it's very much the classic, the mythological hero ordeal where he has to go into the underworld in a world of chaos and weirdness and demonic creatures or creatures who are incapable of expressing themselves in any meaningful way, and make sense of that and somehow bring something back. So into the basic stories go all of these ideas, and it's that is true of everything, where even the smallest elements have to think, well, what does that relate to? How does that relate mythologically? What story does that make me think of in the Bible, and how can I put that in? So all the ideas have little bits that I then stick to them that are wider ideas, or little, fragments of pop culture, little fragments of mythology, little fragments of religion that you can then apply to Superman. Superman isn't Christ, but he was sent to Earth by his father to help us. So you can add a little bit of that. And some writers go too far, kind of Zack Snyder, Jesus, Superman is Jesus. Well, he's not, because Jesus never punched the hell out of anyone, and Superman does. Yeah. But there is one little element that you can show him, superimposed against a golden sun that looks like a halo, and it's kind of reminiscent of Renaissance images of Jesus. But it's only for that one little bit, and in the next part of the story, it's reminiscent of maybe Hercules, or then it's reminiscent of some other folk hero. And so what you get is Superman becomes all the folk heroes at once. He's got a baby sun eater, and he's got the big thing. Well, that's like, Paul Bunyan, the American folk hero, who's got a giant axe and his friendly bull babe. And so you get all these little feelings of Superman connects to so many different things. And the more I can kind of syncretize all those different things that Superman connects to and have a little hint of it, I think, as you say, it adds texture and it adds a depth that you don't have to see that depth, but you can sense it. It reminds you of something, even if you can't put your finger on it. So yeah, very much constantly applying more and more little details that might make you think of a Celtic myth or a story of the Roman emperors or something that relates to the story that I'm telling.
one element that people miss in your stories, but they could not miss in Superman, was the fact that it was a super positive take on the character, and like you tend to infuse this kind of positivity in all your stories, but sometimes it gets lost. While in Superman, it was like the ultimate hope and the ultimate story of hope. How much did you work in this respect, and how much do you think we need hope in our world today?
Well, I think, of course, we need hope, and we'll always have hope, and people, even in the worst situations, will entertain some hope. But I also don't think it's not like a free gift that comes with the comic. I'm not trying to say, oh, here's hope. Here's some hope with your comic. It's more just about trying to approach the world. The world is quite cruel. The world does horrible things to people. But at the same time, it's filled with beauty and wonder and all these amazing things. And the more meaning we add to it, the more meaningful it becomes, and the more it reflects back, and it becomes more interesting to live in. So I think particularly superhero characters, if I was writing a crime story or something, there might be less hope. But in superhero stories, I mean, what else are they good for? So as I said, for me, coming from those days of Doom Patrol and Animal Man, and working out the relationship between the art and the artist, it just seemed more like, if you're going to have superheroes at all, why bring them down to our level? Because we're already at that level. We have 100 stories about gangsters and cops and cowboys who are like us, but we only have a very few characters who are actually beyond us, and so few writers seem willing to think into that space. That's what I found, particularly American writers. I mean, not so much now. I think a lot of them are starting to come around, but American writers saw Superman almost as their enemy. He was a representative of regressive forces, of republicanism, of the flag, of the the mum's apple pie, in a sense of a nostalgic America that wasn't relevant anymore. And they tend to write Superman in that way. They can't quite, either he's this kind of gee whiz kind of country boy of a kind that doesn't exist, or he's a fascist. Naturally, if you have that much power corrupts, so therefore Superman will be the ultimate corrupted human being. And that, to me, it wasn't. No, if Superman existed, and he does exist in the form of a comic book character, we don't have to imagine what he'd be like in the real world, because that's impossible. But as a comic character, he stands for everything that is good about us. So why not dial down on that? Why not explore that? Why not put yourself in the head of a man who's not only super strong, not only super fast, not only super durable, but he's super compassionate. He's super intelligent. He's super poetic. He's like, everything that we're good at, he does it better. And that, to me, is the only value in Superman. And I'd say again, all these portrayals of Superman where he loses it, and he gets angry, and he can't control his powers, and he wants to take over the world and show everyone what's what, and it's that Kryptonians were really fascists. I don't think that Superman has never saved lives, but our Superman and All-Star Superman has actually saved kids' lives, suicidal kids. You can go online and I read this scene and it saved me. And that's the real Superman, the guy who only exists in paper, who only exists to do good, who loves us. He's real. He's the one that saved real human lives. So I think that there is great value in trying to put ourselves as ordinary human beings who suffer and doubt, but putting ourselves in the minds of someone who doesn't leads to very interesting ways of thinking.
Sorry, Nicola.
No, vai, Antonio, vai.
One thing that I find interesting in Superman, but mostly in your comics, but in Superman it was pretty evident, is the way you treat science. It's on one hand, it is comic book science, so it's not real, but it's never insulting like unfortunately, other writers tend to do in comics. How do you go about creating this kind of stuff which can have some sort of poetic, use, but at the same time keeping a bit of accuracy, not to sound too far-fetched or like sloppy?
Yeah, well, it's not like, if you look at someone like Warren Ellis, who really tries to put science into his comic, and he tries to make Iron Man believable, or how do Cyclops beams work, for me, the science in the comics is more, it's the metaphor. You know, I'll read New Scientist and I subscribe to science journals and keep up to date. But it's about the metaphor, you know, what's interesting. And you have, if you can apply something that's real, like that, you have the DC multiverse, which was just created, you know, in 1963. And it was just as it was a marketing tool, really, the idea of the multiverse. What if we can bring back our old characters and have them in a different world? And the notion that then Julie Schwartz thought, well, these worlds are separated by vibration, because all those guys were into music and jazz at the time. So you have this basic idea that's been lying around for a long time, and then string theory and physics catches up. You know, fringe theory starts to talk about, well, there's a really good possibility that we live in a multiverse, which sounds very like the DC multiverse, even though it's not got all the superheroes and all the planets, and some of those planets might not support life at all. But it's the same concept. So if I can then bring in some of the jargon or the ideas from science into something that's purely fictional, like the DC multiverse, then it starts to seem more real, and those bridges are being built between our world and the unreal world, which is what I love to do most. You know, what can we build over there and what can we bring back? So that's the way I tend to use. I tend to use language that's appropriate language, but I'll use the scientific ideas as metaphor or as poetry. But at the same time, as you say, I wouldn't use the wrong jargon. You know, if I'm going to explain something, I'll try to say, well, it works this way using this jargon from physics or using these ideas from physics. And if you go and read up on this, you'll start to think, maybe it's possible. You know, and we're now living in a world right now, the Chinese and I think who else is there? There's 2 nations in the world are now developing super soldiers. So I believe that, you know, we think of these things, and if we think them hard enough, and they become real, you know. And as soon as everyone saw Iron Man on the movies, as soon as they saw the Marvel Universe, suddenly we have countries using CRISPR technology and using the gene enhancements of all kinds to create literal Captain Americas, Captain China, Captain Israel. It's like these guys are on the way now. So there is that. I just always thought that it might be better if we emphasize how good and how noble and useful superheroes are before some real bad bastards come along and don't have role models, that their only role model is the authority.
Se questo video è piaciuto anche a voi, vi ricordo di iscrivervi al nostro canale YouTube e di cliccare soprattutto sulla campanella in modo tale da rimanere costantemente aggiornati sui nostri prossimi video e le nostre prossime interviste. Vi ricordo anche di continuare a seguire i canali social di Panini, quindi Facebook e Instagram. Trovate tutti i link in descrizione. Io vi ringrazio tanto, vi do appuntamento al prossimo video di Panini Comics Insider. Ciao!